We want to bring in one of my favorite sports guys, and I've known him for years, and he's been on the O'Reilly Factor and all that. Stephen A. Smith. He's one of the few guys at ESPN that anybody's ever heard of. I don't even know where you get these guys, but they come from Argentina. I love soccer. I love soccer. I don't know who they are, but I know you. I know
Right,
you.
right, right.
Okay, so
Right.
am I being unfair by saying, as a fan, I don't want to see politics on game day?
I think you are. And the reason why, and first of all, thank you for having me on your show. You and I have tussled back and forth in a very friendly manner on numerous occasions in the past. So I'm happy to do it again with you. I think you're being a bit unfair in this regard. And I'll say the same thing to you that I said to the great one, Mark Levin, a few weeks ago. You would have a profound point if indeed stuff was taking place while the game was being played. Somebody protesting or kneeling or what have you before a game takes place isn't impeding your ability to enjoy the game. And that's what I would take. That's where I would challenge folks in that regard. When Colin
All right.
Kaepernick took a, I'm sorry, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, you can call that politics. To black folks, we don't consider that politics. You know, if you're talking about a president, if you're talking about an elected official, if you're talking about policy, well, that's politics. If you're talking about what's going on in the streets of the United States of America, then that's real life and that's real life issues. And we would, and somebody like myself, along with various others, would challenge the notion that that's politics invading the sports. It's not
All right, let
politics.
me challenge you. Number one,
Sure.
Colin Kaepernick has become a political guy. If you looked at his 4th of July message just a couple of months ago, it was virulently anti-American. I mean, it's basically
Yes,
saying
that's
this is
true.
a horrible country. So he's a politician.
Right.
Number two, on the field this year, there will be decals on helmets. And most of the decals will say things that are sympathetic to social justice. So that's during the game that I'm getting a political message on the helmet. Now, I wouldn't mind it if if you had Black Lives Matter on one side and respect the police on the other side. A little bit of balance. But you can't have that because of the peer pressure in the National Football League, where 70% of the players are African American. And a guy like Drew Brees, a white guy, says, you know what, I'm not going to kneel because I've got a legacy, a military legacy, and I respect the flag. And he's almost drummed out of the league.
Well, first of all, let me say a couple of things. Number one, you and I don't disagree. I love that argument about balance. I am not somebody that's averse to that. I'm not opposed to that by any stretch of the imagination. If you sat on one side and you had Black Lives Matter, but you also had on the other side, you know, respect our law enforcement officials and things of that nature, I don't have an aversion to that whatsoever. That's number one. So there's no resistance here in that regard. What I would tell you about Drew Brees, who is a good man and a phenomenal football player and has been very charitable and philanthropic in many, many ways to benefit various disenfranchised communities throughout this country. Definitely, there is no question that some of the uproar that was aimed in his direction was a bit excessive. But as somebody who has spoken to Drew Brees, as somebody that knows him a little bit, let me give you this insight. When he responded, understand what the problem was. His problem was there was an issue that took place. And then when he was asked about the national anthem, when Colin Kaepernick originally took a knee, I'm not talking about his comments this past summer that you highlighted and accurately so. I'm talking about the sole act of taking the knee. He specifically explained, I'm not being disrespectful to the flag. I'm not being unpatriotic. I actually consulted with military folks to make sure that I wasn't coming across as disrespectful. I wanted to do something to bring attention to racial oppression and racial inequality that's going on in this nation. And so when he took that position, anybody that speaks about it and then goes the route of patriotism, the sense is you're echoing what the president did by basically hijacking the narrative and turning it into something that it was not. It was never about being unpatriotic. It was never about questioning one's patriotism. It was about bringing attention and highlighting racial strife that the African
All
American
right, but
community
you
feels in this
know,
country. There's a difference.
you know as well as I do, because I know the
Right.
league pretty well. I know a lot of people in it.
You do. You do.
That if you are going to stand for the national anthem, there are going to be players that don't like you and that are going to be, you know, there was a problem with New Orleans because the management felt that they would have a divided locker room and that there would be strife, and you can't win if the team hates each other. And that's what the genesis of that situation was.
Well, let me give you a fact that you may or may not know this, Bill. Did you know that in 2016, 2017, when Colin Kaepernick elected to take a knee, there wasn't more than 11 players who joined him? There's 1,696 players on an NFL roster opening day.
Do you know why? Do you know why?
But what I'm saying,
only 11.
No, what I'm saying, they didn't join him. They didn't
But do you
feel
know
like
why?
taking that position.
No,
well,
no.
some of them they have different reasons. There's no definitive answers. I don't have a definitive.
Here's the definitive answer.
Sure.
The owners told them not to. Mara, Kraft, the guy in Dallas,
some of them,
Jones, almost all of them.
Some
said,
of them.
Don't do this.
But the other, you're not wrong. But what I'm saying to you is that some of them knew without being told that there were going to be ramifications and it would not be worth it. So
That's right.
Basically, you're right about that. So basically, you're right. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong. I'm simply saying that the owners didn't have to literally say that to them in order for them to recognize that there was going to be fallout and there was going to be ramifications.
But they
from
did.
it. And in their eyes, it wasn't worth it.
Bill O'Reilly is back on TV and only on The First. No Spin News, every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on The First.